How could you, Carson? Just days from our anniversary? I glanced at the crumpled love letter in my hand, bile rising in my throat. The words blurred as tears stung my eyes. Carson's face paled. Margot, please let me explain. Explain what? I spat. That you've been having an affair behind my back? With whom? My mind raced, trying to make sense of the betrayal. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. It was a moment of weakness, a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything? I echoed, my voice trembling with rage. Then what is this? I waved the damning letter in his face. Carson flinched, his eyes downcast. I'm sorry, Margot, truly, but we can't tell my mother. Not now. You know how fragile her health is. His mother, Faye, the woman who had embraced me as her own daughter when Carson and I married 5 years ago. A pang of guilt twisted in my gut, but it was quickly overshadowed by the bitter taste of betrayal. So, you expect me to just pretend everything is fine? I asked, incredulous. To lie to her, to everyone, while you carry on with your affair? Carson stepped closer, his hands outstretched in a placating gesture. It's over, I swear. It was a foolish mistake that won't happen again. But if we tell her now, so close to our anniversary, it could devastate her. Please, Margot, for her sake, let's keep this between us for now. I searched his eyes, desperate for any glimmer of truth, any sign that the man I loved was still in there. But all I saw was a stranger, a coward willing to sacrifice my trust for his own selfish reasons. Clenching my jaw, I nodded curtly. Fine, we'll keep up appearances for now, but mark my words, Carson, this isn't over. You've shattered my trust, and I won't forget that. Relief washed over his features, but I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow ache in my chest. As he reached out to embrace me, I recoiled, my body rigid with resentment. In that moment, a seed of determination took root within me. I would play along, bide my time, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury. Carson's betrayal would not go unanswered, and he would soon learn the true cost of his deceit. With a steely resolve, I turned away, already plotting my revenge. The anniversary celebration would be a mere charade, a calm before the storm I intended to unleash upon our fractured family. Margot, I don't trust her taking care of you, Carson murmured as he caressed my swollen belly. But there's no one else. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. I'll be fine, Carson. It's just for a few days while you're away on business. His brow furrowed with concern, but he nodded reluctantly. All right, but promise me you'll call if she gives you any trouble. As if on cue, the doorbell rang, and Faye's familiar silhouette appeared through the frosted glass. I plastered on a smile, determined not to let her see my apprehension. Margot, darling! Faye enveloped me in a suffocating embrace, her saccharine tone already grating on my nerves. How are my beautiful grandchildren treating you? We're doing well, Faye, I replied, extricating myself from her grip. Thank you for offering to help while Carson is away. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but the smile remained fixed in place. Of course, dear. What are mothers-in-law for? Carson cleared his throat, shooting me a pointed look before turning to his mother. I'll be back in a few days. Take good care of her, Mom. Don't you worry about a thing, Faye cooed, patting his arm reassuringly. Margot and the babies will be in excellent hands. As Carson departed, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that settled in the pit of my stomach. Faye's kindly demeanor was already beginning to fray, revealing glimpses of the true nature I had witnessed during her tirades against me. The first few hours passed without incident, but as the day wore on, Faye's criticisms grew more frequent and cutting. Margot, dear, are you sure you should be eating that? She clucked disapprovingly as I reached for a snack. You wouldn't want to put on too much weight, would you? I bit my tongue, reminding myself that confrontation would only escalate the situation. Later, as I attempted to tidy up the living room, Faye squeaked loudly. Honestly, Margot, is this how you keep house? No wonder Carson is always so stressed. The barbs continued, each one chipping away at my resolve. By evening, I was utterly exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The next morning, Faye's true colors emerged in full force. Up and at 'em, Margot, she trilled, throwing open the curtains to let in the harsh morning light. There's so much to be done around here. Before I could protest, she thrust a list of chores into my hands, a veritable marathon of tasks that would have been daunting for someone without the added strain of a twin pregnancy. But Faye, I'm not sure I should be doing all of this, I ventured cautiously. The doctor said I need to take it easy. Her eyes flashed with barely concealed contempt. Nonsense. A little hard work never hurt anyone. Now get moving, or do you want my grandchildren to grow up in a pigsty? Cowed by her forceful tone, I reluctantly began tackling the list, my back and feet aching with every task. Faye hovered nearby, offering a steady stream of criticism and barbed comments that left me feeling utterly demoralized. By the time Carson returned home, I was a physical and emotional wreck, my body racked with pain and my spirit crushed by Faye's relentless onslaught. As he took in my haggard appearance, concern etched deep lines across his brow. "Margot, what happened? Are you all right?" Before I could respond, Faye swooped in, her saccharine mask firmly in place. "She's just been overdoing it, that's all. You know how nesting can be for expectant mothers." I opened my mouth to protest, to reveal the truth about her abusive behavior, but one withering glance from Faye silenced me. In that moment, I realized that confronting her directly would only lead to further anguish. No, I would bide my time, gather my strength, and when the opportunity presented itself, I would unleash the full force of my fury upon Faye and Carson both. Their betrayals would not go unanswered, and they would soon learn the true cost of underestimating my resilience. "You're just like your mother, worthless," Faye hissed, her words cutting through the silence like a knife. "I don't take orders from a failure." My heart sank as her cruel words echoed in the empty house. Memories of my late mother's gentle smile and unwavering love flooded my mind, a stark contrast to the venom spewing from Faye's lips. "How dare you speak about her like that?" I managed, my voice trembling with a mixture of grief and rage. Faye's lips curled into a contemptuous sneer. "What? You think you're better than me? Than this family? You're nothing but a leech, leeching off my son's success." I recoiled as if struck, her words cutting deeper than any physical blow. Was this truly how she saw me, after all these years of trying to be the perfect daughter-in-law? "I've given everything to this family," I protested, my hands instinctively cradling my swollen belly. "These are Carson's children I'm carrying." Faye's gaze dropped to my midsection, her expression twisting into one of disdain. "Don't flatter yourself. Once those brats are born, you're out of the picture, I'll make sure of it." A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the bond between a mother and her newborns. The thought was utterly unthinkable. Yet I knew in that moment that Faye was capable of any cruelty imaginable. "You're a monster," I whispered, hot tears stinging my eyes. Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. "I'm a realist, dear, and the reality is you're not fit to be a mother, not to my grandchildren." In that instant, something shifted within me. The fear and grief that had paralyzed me moments before gave way to a burning determination. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Squaring my shoulders, I met Faye's icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. "You're wrong, Faye. I am a mother, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect my children from your poisonous influence." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. "We'll see about that," she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. With shaking fingers, I typed out a message to Carson, pleading for his help, his intervention. But even as I hit send, a part of me knew that this battle could not be won through his involvement alone. Faye's hatred ran too deep, her grip on our family too tight. No, if I wanted to truly free myself and my children from her toxic grasp, I would need to take matters into my own hands. And as I felt the tiny flutters of life within me, I knew that I would stop at nothing to ensure their safety and happiness. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. "You think you're special because you're carrying his babies? Once they're born, you're out." Faye's words cut deeper than any knife, slicing through the fragile peace I had managed to maintain. I clutched my swollen belly protectively, as if shielding my unborn children from the venom dripping from her tongue. "What are you saying, Faye?" Her lips twisted into a cruel smirk. "Exactly what you think, dear. Once those brats are out of you, I'll make sure they stay right where they belong, with their real family." A chill ran down my spine as the full weight of her threat sank in. She meant to take my children from me, to sever the sacred bond between mother and child before it could even form. "You're insane," I breathed, my voice trembling with a potent mixture of fear and rage. "They're my babies, Faye. You can't just take them away." Faye's laughter was cold, devoid of any warmth or humor. "Watch me. You're nothing but an incubator, Margot, a means to an end. Once you've served your purpose, you'll be discarded like the worthless trash you are." Bile rose in my throat as I fought the urge to lash out, to claw and scratch until this vile woman understood the depth of my fury. But I knew such actions would only give her more ammunition, more justification for her twisted schemes. Instead, I forced myself to remain calm, to meet her icy glare with a steely resolve of my own. "I won't let you do this, Faye. These are my children, and I will fight with every breath in my body to protect them from your poisonous influence." Her eyes narrowed dangerously, but I held my ground, emboldened by the knowledge that I was fighting for something far greater than myself. "We'll see about that," she spat, turning on her heel and storming from the room. As her footsteps faded, I sank onto the couch, my hands trembling as I fought back tears of rage and despair. How could I have been so blind, so naive to the true depths of Faye's depravity? But even as doubt crept in, a newfound determination took root within me. I would not allow this bitter, twisted woman to dictate the course of my life or my family's future. Not anymore. With shaking fingers, I reached for my phone, opening the camera app and beginning to document the evidence of Faye's abuse. The cutting remarks, the emotional manipulation, the thinly veiled threats. Every cruel word, every caustic glance captured and preserved for the day when I would finally strike back. As the days passed, the collection grew, a damning testament to the true nature of the woman I had once foolishly called family. And with each new entry, my resolve hardened, my desire for retribution burning brighter than ever before. I would not be cowed, not be silenced or pushed aside like some inconvenient obstacle. I was a mother, a force of nature, and I would stop at nothing to ensure the safety and happiness of my children. The war had begun, and I would emerge victorious no matter the cost. "Faye, step back. I've heard everything." Carson's voice roared as he burst through the door, his eyes blazing with fury. "You have no right to threaten my wife." Faye's menacing glare faltered as Carson wrapped a protective arm around my shoulders, pulling me close to his chest. I clutched the damning evidence against Faye, bracing myself for the inevitable confrontation. "I should have known better than to trust a manipulative snake like you," Carson spat, his words dripping with venom as he glared at his mother. Faye's jaw clenched, her eyes narrowing into slits of rage. "How dare you speak to me that way after everything I've sacrificed for this family?" As Faye's vicious tongue unleashed on Carson, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger towards her for the emotional torment she had inflicted on me. Her cruel taunts and empty threats had left me questioning my self-worth as a woman, as a mother. Just as I was about to unleash my bottled-up rage, the doorbell rang, breaking the tension. As I opened the door, my heart sank as I saw the sympathetic gaze of our dear friend, who had been a shoulder to lean on during my darkest moments. "Faye, you have no right to make threats against my wife," she said, her voice laced with anger. "She is carrying my grandchildren, and I will not have you terrorize her any longer." Faye's menacing glare softened as she realized the gravity of her actions and the consequences it could bring. As she begrudgingly let go of her bitterness, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, knowing that her toxic influence would no longer affect our family. However, as Faye's demeanor changed, so did her perception of me. She realized that I was not the weak, helpless woman she had initially thought, but rather a strong, resilient individual who could stand up to her manipulative ways. As Faye begrudgingly accepted my strength, I felt a sense of empowerment, knowing that I had the ability to confront her and break free from her emotional hold. In that moment, I realized that Faye's actions were a reflection of her own insecurities and fears, rather than a personal attack against me. Her cruel words and empty threats were a desperate attempt to maintain control and assert her dominance. As I confronted Faye's fears, I felt a sense of pity for her, rather than anger. Her actions were a cry for attention and validation, which she sought through emotional manipulation. Ultimately, Faye's threats were a test of my resilience and strength of character. By standing firm in the face of her intimidation tactics, I proved that I was not easily swayed by her empty promises or hollow threats. In the end, Faye's actions only served to strengthen my resolve and determination to be a better person, a better mother, and a better daughter-in-law. This affair ends now, Carson. My voice rang out, clear and unwavering, as I threw the crumpled love letters onto the dining table before the astonished faces of our family. You won't control me anymore. Carson's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Beside him, Faye's expression contorted into a mask of rage, her hands clenching into tight fists. "How dare you bring this filth into my home?" she hissed, her gaze boring into me with a hatred I had never seen before. I met her glare with a steely resolve, emboldened by the knowledge that the truth was finally out in the open. "Your home? This is my home too, Faye. Or have you forgotten that I'm Carson's wife?" Harold, Faye's husband, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting between the damning letters and his wife's furious countenance. "Faye, what is the meaning of this?" Before she could respond, Carson's sister, Allison, spoke up, her voice laced with disgust. "It means my dear brother has been unfaithful, father, to Margot, to this family." A heavy silence descended upon the room, thick with tension and unspoken accusations. I could feel the weight of their judgmental stares, but I refused to shrink away, to cower in the face of their scrutiny. "Well," I challenged, my gaze sweeping over the assembled family members, "does anyone else have anything to say?" Faye's lips curled into a sneer. "You're making a fool of yourself, Margot. Carson would never betray me like this." A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Betray you? Is that what you think this is about, Faye? Open your eyes. Your son has been carrying on an affair behind my back, and you've been too blinded by your own twisted desires to see it." Carson flinched as if struck, his face flushing with shame. "Margot, please, let me explain." But I had no interest in his excuses, his feeble attempts at justification. "Explain what, Carson? How you lied to me, day after day, while you were off gallivanting with your mistress. Or maybe you'd like to explain why you allowed your vile mother to abuse and torment me, all in the name of keeping up appearances." Faye's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Watch your tone, girl. You have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't I?" I shot back, my voice rising with each syllable. "I have the bruises, the recordings, the proof of every vicious word and cruel taunt you've hurled at me over these past months." Harold's brow furrowed, his gaze shifting towards his wife with a newfound wariness. "Faye, is this true? Have you been mistreating Margot?" Before she could respond, I plowed ahead, determined to lay bare the full extent of their betrayal. "It's all true, Harold, every word. And it's not just Faye. Carson has been lying to us all, carrying on an affair right under our noses." A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I could see the realization dawning on their faces, the scales finally falling from their eyes. Allison was the first to speak, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You bastard! How could you do this to Margot, to your own children?" Carson opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off with a sharp wave of my hand. "Save it, Carson. I'm done with your lies, your manipulation. From this moment on, you and your mother have no hold over me or my children. We're through." As the chaos erupted around me, with Faye and Carson desperately trying to regain control of the situation, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The shackles of their oppression had finally been broken, and I was free. Free to forge my own path, to build the life I deserved for myself and my babies. And as Harold and Allison rallied to my side, their support and solidarity a balm against the sting of betrayal, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the strength and resilience that had carried me through this darkest of storms. The war was won, and I had emerged victorious. "You played me for a fool, Faye." Harold's voice was cold, unyielding, as he stared down his wife, his eyes hard as flint. "All these years, and I never knew the true depths of your cruelty." Faye's lips twisted into a sneer, but I could see the fear flickering in her eyes as the full weight of her actions finally caught up to her. "Harold, please, you don't understand." "Don't I?" He cut her off, his tone sharp as a blade. "You abused my daughter-in-law, threatened to take her children from her. And for what? Some twisted sense of control?" Carson stepped forward, his face etched with desperation. "Dad, Mom, please, we can work through this, as a family." But Harold was having none of it, his gaze swinging towards his son with a mixture of disappointment and disgust. "And you, Carson, how could you let this happen? How could you stand by while your own wife was tormented, all for the sake of keeping up appearances?" Carson flinched as if struck, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I almost felt a pang of pity for him, caught in the crossfire of his own making. Almost. "I never meant for things to go this far," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I was just trying to protect Mom, to keep the family together." A bitter laugh escaped my lips before I could stop it. "Protect her? From what, Carson? The consequences of her own actions?" Allison stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous fury as she glared at her brother and mother. "You're both pathetic. Margot has shown more strength and resilience in these past few months than either of you could ever hope to muster." A swell of gratitude washed over me at her words, her unwavering support a balm against the sting of betrayal. At least someone in this twisted family had their priorities straight. Faye's gaze swung towards me, her expression a mixture of hatred and begrudging respect. "So what now, Margot? You've had your little tantrum, exposed us all for the world to see. Are you satisfied?" I met her glare head-on, my spine straight and unyielding. Satisfied? Hardly. "I want you out of this house, Faye. Out of our lives, until you can learn to treat me with the respect I deserve as Carson's wife and the mother of your grandchildren." A stunned silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of Harold's slow, deliberate clapping. "Well said, Margot," he murmured, his gaze never leaving his wife's face. "You heard her, Faye. Pack your things and leave. I won't have you poisoning this family any longer with your bitterness and manipulation." Faye's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, her carefully cultivated facade of control crumbling before our very eyes. "Harold, you can't be serious." But the look in his eyes brooked no argument, no room for negotiation. For once, the iron-willed matriarch had met her match, and she had no choice but to bend to the collective will of those she had sought to dominate for so long. As she stormed from the room, her parting glare promising retribution, I couldn't help but feel a sense of victory, of hard-won triumph. The battle had been fought, the war won, and though the scars of betrayal still stung, I knew that I had emerged stronger, more resilient than ever before. Carson's pleading gaze found mine, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Margot, please, give me a chance to make things right. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust, your love." I studied him for a long moment, weighing the sincerity of his words against the weight of his transgressions. In the end, only time would tell if our bond could truly be mended, if the wounds of his infidelity would ever fully heal. But as I felt the gentle flutters of life within me, a reminder of the precious souls I carried, I knew that I owed it to them, and to myself, to at least try. "We'll see, Carson," I murmured, my voice laced with a cautious hope. "We'll see. We've been through hell, but this new chapter is ours." Carson's voice was soft, remorseful, as he cradled one of our newborn twins, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I promise I'll spend every day making it up to you and our children." I studied his weary features, the lines of exhaustion etched deep into his face after the tumultuous events of the past few months. A part of me still seethed with anger, the memory of his betrayal a festering wound that refused to heal. And yet, as I gazed down at the tiny miracles swaddled in my arms, I knew that harboring that rage would only breed more toxicity, more pain. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again, Carson," I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. "What you did, what your mother did, it nearly broke me." He flinched, but nodded, his expression one of resigned acceptance. "I know, and I'll carry that guilt for the rest of my life. But please, Margot, let me prove myself to you, to our family. Give me a chance to be the husband, the father, that you all deserve." A gentle hand on my shoulder made me turn, and I found myself gazing into the kind eyes of Harold, my father-in-law and unexpected ally through this entire ordeal. "He's not the only one who needs to atone," Harold said, his voice laced with regret. "I should have seen what Faye was doing, put a stop to her cruelty before it went too far. For that, I am truly sorry, Margot." I felt a lump form in my throat at his words, touched by his humility and willingness to shoulder the blame. Thank you, Harold. That means more than you know. Allison stepped forward, her expression one of fierce determination. We're a family, Margot, and families stick together no matter what. Carson and Faye made mistakes, but we'll get through this together. A warm sense of gratitude washed over me as I looked around at the faces of those who had rallied to my side, who had chosen to stand against the toxic influences that had nearly torn us all apart. Though the road ahead was uncertain, I knew that with their support, their unwavering loyalty, we could overcome any obstacle. All right, I said, my voice strengthening with each syllable. We'll take it one day at a time, rebuild what was broken. But know this, Carson. One more misstep, one more lie, and you're out. I won't let our children grow up in an environment of mistrust and manipulation, not again. Carson nodded solemnly, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and renewed determination. You have my word, Margot. From now on, it's just us, a family, united and strong. As I gazed down at the precious bundles in my arms, their tiny faces scrunched in peaceful slumber, I felt a surge of fierce love and protectiveness. These children, my children, would know only love, only safety and security. The shadows of the past would not be allowed to dim their futures, not while I still drew breath. Faye's specter lingered in the periphery, a constant reminder of the darkness we had overcome. But in that moment, surrounded by the warmth and solidarity of those who truly mattered, I knew that her hold over us was broken, forever shattered by the resilience of our bond. A new chapter was beginning, one forged in the fires of hardship and betrayal, but tempered by the strength of our love and the unbreakable ties that bound us together as a family. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. We would face it united, our spirits unbowed, our resolve unshakable, for we were survivors, warriors in our own right, and no force on earth could ever break us again. The sun shone brightly through the kitchen windows as I bustled about, preparing a hearty Sunday lunch for my family. The aroma of roasted chicken and freshly baked bread filled the air, and I couldn't help but smile. These moments of togetherness meant the world to me. As I set the table, my daughter Hannah walked in, her eyes red and puffy. My heart sank. Mom, I don't know how to say this, but Peter, he's been having an affair for a long time. I found out last night. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I rushed to her side, enveloping her in a tight embrace. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Tears streamed down her face as she clung to me, her body shaking with sobs. The rest of the family trickled in, their chatter dying down as they sensed the somber atmosphere. What's going on? My son Michael asked, concern etched on his face. I took a deep breath. Everyone, please sit down. We need to have a family discussion. As they gathered around the table, I held Hannah's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Hannah has just found out that Peter has been unfaithful to her for quite some time. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. My husband, David, slammed his fist on the table. That bastard! How could he do this to our little girl? Hannah's lower lip trembled. I don't know what to do, Mom. I feel so lost. I looked her straight in the eye, my voice firm. You listen to me, Hannah. You are not alone in this. We are here for you every step of the way. We will get through this together, as a family. Nods of agreement and words of support echoed around the table. Michael wrapped an arm around his sister's shoulders. We've got your back, sis. Always. As the initial shock subsided, we began to discuss the next steps. I couldn't help but think back to my own troubled marriage with Hannah's father, Richard. The countless arguments, the cold shoulders, and the constant meddling from his mother, Agnes. It had been a difficult time, but I had emerged stronger, more resilient. I knew I had to be that pillar of strength for Hannah now. She needed me more than ever, and I was determined to guide her through this storm. First things first, I said, my voice steady. We need to make sure you and the children are safe, Hannah. If Peter's behavior escalates, we'll take legal action. Hannah nodded, wiping away her tears. I never thought it would come to this, Mom. I always believed we could work through anything. I squeezed her hand again. Sometimes, sweetheart, people change. And not always for the better. But you have to remember, this is not your fault. You deserve so much better than this. As the conversation continued, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Anger towards Peter for betraying my daughter, sadness for the pain she was going through, but also a fierce determination to protect her, to help her navigate this difficult chapter in her life. I glanced around the table, taking in the faces of my loved ones. This was what family was all about, being there for each other through the good times and the bad. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that we would weather this storm together. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the kitchen, I hugged Hannah tightly. "We'll take this one day at a time, sweetheart. You're not alone. You have all of us, and we will never let you fall." With those words, I silently vowed to be Hannah's rock, her guiding light through the darkness, because that's what mothers do. We love, we protect, and we fight for our children, no matter what life throws our way. As I sat with Hannah in her living room, the weight of her revelation hung heavy in the air. My mind drifted back to my own troubled marriage with Richard, and the struggles I faced with his mother, Agnes. "I remember how Agnes treated me," I said softly, taking Hannah's hand in mine. "She never thought I was good enough, Hannah. Agnes always picked Richard's side, no matter how much I tried. You're not going through this alone." Hannah's eyes welled up with tears. "I just don't understand, Mom. How could Peter do this to me, to our family?" I sighed, the memories of my own pain resurfacing. "Sometimes people change, sweetheart, and not always for the better, but you have to remember, this is not your fault. You deserve so much better than this." Just then the front door opened and Peter walked in, his face etched with annoyance. "What's going on here?" he demanded, eyeing me suspiciously. Hannah stood up, her voice trembling. "Peter, we need to talk about your affair." Peter's eyes widened and he scoffed. "I don't know what you're talking about, Hannah. You're being ridiculous." I couldn't hold back any longer. "Don't you dare lie to her, Peter. She knows the truth, and so do I." Peter's face reddened with anger. "This is none of your business, Nora. Stay out of it." I stood my ground, my voice firm. "It became my business the moment you broke my daughter's heart. How could you do this to her, to your children?" Peter rolled his eyes. "Oh, please, spare me the lecture. You have no idea what goes on in our marriage." Hannah's voice cut through the tension. "Enough, Peter. I can't do this anymore. I want you to leave." Peter's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious, Hannah. You're overreacting." I placed a supportive hand on Hannah's shoulder. "She's not overreacting, Peter. She's standing up for herself, for what's right." As Peter stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind him, Hannah collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "I don't know what to do, Mom. I'm so scared." I held her tightly, my heart breaking for my daughter. "I know, sweetheart, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together, I promise." The next day, I accompanied Hannah to her in-laws' house to break the news to Peter's mother, Elaine. As we sat in their pristine living room, Elaine's cold eyes bore into us. "What's this all about?" she asked, her voice dripping with disdain. Hannah took a deep breath. "Elaine, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Peter has been having an affair." Elaine's eyes narrowed. "And you believe this nonsense, Hannah? Really?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "It's not nonsense, Elaine. Peter admitted it himself." Elaine scoffed. "Well, if it's true, then you must have done something to drive him away, Hannah. A man doesn't just cheat on his wife for no reason." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, and I felt a surge of anger course through me. "How dare you blame Hannah for this, Elaine? Your son is the one who broke his vows, who betrayed his family." Elaine stood up, her voice rising. "I will not sit here and listen to you accuse my son of such things. If your daughter couldn't keep her husband satisfied, that's her problem, not mine." As we left Elaine's house, I couldn't shake the feeling of déjà vu. The way she had spoken to Hannah, the blame she had placed on her, it was all too familiar. It was the same way Agnes had treated me during my marriage to Richard. I turned to Hannah, my resolve hardening. "We're not going to let them break you, sweetheart. You're stronger than they think. We'll find a way through this, together." As we drove home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in my daughter. She was facing her darkest hour with grace and strength, just as I had all those years ago. And I knew, without a doubt, that we would weather this storm, no matter what obstacles lay ahead. Weeks passed, and the situation only seemed to worsen. Peter had started openly dating his lover, Kate, a younger coworker, humiliating Hannah and further straining their marriage. I watched helplessly as my daughter's once vibrant spirit slowly diminished, replaced by a constant cloud of sadness and despair. One afternoon, I decided to visit Hannah, hoping to offer some comfort and support. As I walked into her house, I was greeted by the sound of raised voices coming from the living room. I cautiously made my way towards the commotion, only to find Hannah and Elaine engaged in a heated argument. "You've failed as a wife, Hannah. Peter deserves better," Elaine cruelly told her, her words dripping with venom. Hannah's eyes welled up with tears, and I felt a surge of anger course through my veins. I stepped forward, placing a protective arm around my daughter's shoulders. "How dare you speak to her like that, Elaine?" I said, my voice trembling with rage. "Can't you see how much she's hurting?" Elaine scoffed, her eyes narrowing. "Oh, please, Nora. Don't act like you're some saint. You couldn't keep your own husband happy, and now look at your daughter. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it?" I felt as if I had been slapped. The painful memories of my own failed marriage came rushing back, threatening to overwhelm me, but I refused to let Elaine see me crumble. I had to be strong for Hannah's sake. "You're wrong, Elaine," I said, my voice steady. "Hannah is not to blame for Peter's actions. He made the choice to betray his family, and he alone bears that responsibility." Elaine rolled her eyes. "Keep telling yourself that, Nora. But the truth is, if Hannah had been a better wife, none of this would have happened." With that, she stormed out of the house, leaving Hannah and me in stunned silence. I turned to my daughter, pulling her into a tight embrace as she sobbed against my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I feel like such a failure." I pulled back, cupping her face in my hands. "Listen to me, Hannah. You are not a failure. You are a strong, beautiful woman who deserves so much better than this. We're going to get through this together, I promise." As the days turned into weeks, I watched as Peter continued to flaunt his affair, parading Kate around town like some sort of trophy. Elaine, ever the enabler, stood by his side, defending his actions and blaming Hannah for the breakdown of their marriage. I felt my resolve harden with each passing day. I couldn't stand by and watch my daughter suffer any longer. I had to do something, anything, to help her break free from this toxic situation. One evening, as I sat with Hannah in her living room, I broached the subject of separation. "Hannah, sweetheart, I know this is difficult, but have you considered leaving Peter? You don't have to continue living like this." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. "I've thought about it, Mom, but I'm so scared. What about the children? What will people think?" I took her hand in mine, my voice firm. "The only thing that matters is your happiness and well-being, Hannah. You have to do what's best for you and the kids, and as for what people think, to hell with them. You have nothing to be ashamed of." Hannah nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "You're right, Mom. I can't keep living like this. I need to be strong, for myself and for Emily and Jason." I smiled, pride swelling in my chest. "That's my girl. We're going to get through this, Hannah. You're stronger than you think. We'll find a way." As I left Hannah's house that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing on the horizon. But I knew without a doubt that we would weather it together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. My daughter's happiness and freedom were worth fighting for, and I was ready to do whatever it took to help her reclaim her life. In the weeks that followed, I watched as Hannah slowly began to push back against Peter and Elaine's toxic influence. Encouraged by my unwavering support, she started to stand up for herself, refusing to be a victim any longer. One afternoon, as we sat in my kitchen sipping tea, Hannah confided in me about her plan to gather evidence of Peter's infidelity. "I need to protect Emily and Jason, Mom," she said, her voice trembling. "If we do end up separating, I want to make sure I have proof of Peter's affair to ensure the kids stay with me." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride at my daughter's strength and determination. "You're doing the right thing, Hannah. You don't have to continue living like this. We're stronger than they think. We will find a way." Just then, the doorbell rang. I excused myself and went to answer it, surprised to find my sister Diane standing on the other side. "Diane, what a pleasant surprise. Come in, come in." As we settled back in the kitchen, Diane's eyes fell on Hannah, and she immediately sensed that something was amiss. "What's going on, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Hannah took a deep breath and began to recount the events of the past few months, from Peter's affair to Elaine's cruel treatment. As she spoke, I could see the anger and empathy building in Diane's eyes. "Oh, Hannah," she said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. But you know what? You're not alone. I've been there too." Hannah's eyes widened. "You have?" Diane nodded, a sad smile on her face. "Years ago, my ex-husband cheated on me. It was the most painful experience of my life. But you know what I learned? That I was stronger than I ever thought possible. And so are you, Hannah." As Diane shared her own story of betrayal and resilience, I could see the glimmer of hope returning to Hannah's eyes. She had always looked up to Diane as a mother figure, and hearing that she had overcome a similar situation seemed to give her the strength she needed to keep fighting. Over the next few days, Hannah and I worked together to gather evidence of Peter's affair. We compiled text messages, emails, and even hired a private investigator to capture photos of Peter and Kate together. It was a difficult and emotionally draining process, but we knew it was necessary to protect Hannah and the children. As we sat in my living room, sorting through the evidence, Hannah suddenly broke down in tears. "I can't believe this is happening, Mom," she sobbed. "I never thought I'd be in this position, fighting for my marriage, my family." I pulled her into a tight embrace, stroking her hair as she cried. "I know, sweetheart, it's not fair, but you're doing the right thing. You're standing up for yourself, for your happiness, and that takes an incredible amount of courage." Hannah pulled back, wiping her tears. "But what about Emily and Jason? They need their father. Am I being selfish, putting my own happiness above their needs?" I shook my head, my voice firm. "Absolutely not, Hannah. Your children need a mother who is happy, healthy, and respected. They need to see you standing up for yourself, showing them that it's never okay to accept abuse or infidelity. You're setting an example for them, one of strength and self-worth." As the days turned into weeks, I watched as Hannah continued to gather her strength, preparing herself for the battle ahead. She knew that confronting Peter and Elaine would not be easy, but she was determined to reclaim her life, to build a better future for herself and her children. And through it all, I was there by her side, along with Diane, offering our unwavering support and love. We were a team, a united front against the darkness that threatened to tear our family apart. And together, we would find a way to overcome, to emerge stronger than ever before. The day I received a frantic call from Hannah, I knew something was terribly wrong. Her voice was shaking, and I could hear the tears in her words as she spoke. "Mom, I need you to come over right away. It's Peter. He's gone too far this time." I didn't hesitate for a moment. I grabbed my keys and rushed to Hannah's house, my heart pounding in my chest. When I arrived, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and her eyes red from crying. "What happened, sweetheart?" I asked, taking a seat beside her. Hannah took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "I found out that Peter is planning to move Kate into our home. He wants her to live with us, to be a part of our family." I felt a surge of anger course through my veins. How could Peter be so cruel, so selfish, to not only betray his wife, but to flaunt his affair in front of his children, in the home they shared as a family? I confronted him about it, Hannah continued, her voice growing stronger. "I told him that if he wants to be with Kate, he can have her, but he will not turn our home into some playground for his affair." I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. "Good for you, Hannah. You did the right thing, standing up for yourself and your children." But even as I spoke those words, I could see the fear in Hannah's eyes. She knew that this confrontation was only the beginning, that Peter and Elaine would not take her defiance lying down. And she was right. In the days that followed, Peter's backlash was fierce. He raged at Hannah, calling her unstable, unfit to be a mother. He threatened to take the children away from her, to paint her as a villain in the eyes of the court. Elaine, ever the manipulator, only fueled the flames. She whispered poisonous words in Peter's ear, telling him that Hannah was trying to destroy their family, that she was a danger to their children. I watched as Hannah struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy for Emily and Jason, even as the tension in the house reached a boiling point. She put on a brave face for them, reading them bedtime stories and helping them with their homework, all while Peter and Elaine's cruelty loomed over her like a dark cloud. But through it all, Hannah remained strong. She leaned on me and Diane for support, finding solace in our unwavering love and encouragement. And slowly but surely, I could see a change in her, a newfound resilience and determination that refused to be broken. One evening, as we sat together in my living room, Hannah turned to me with a fire in her eyes. "I want a separation, Mom. I can't keep living like this in a house filled with so much hatred and betrayal." I took her hand in mine, squeezing it tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Hannah. You're doing the right thing for yourself and for your children." Hannah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I know it won't be easy, Mom. Peter and Elaine will fight me every step of the way, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready to take my life back, to build a better future for myself and my kids." As I looked at my daughter, I saw a strength in her that I had never seen before. She had been through so much, endured so much pain and heartache, but she had emerged from it all with a fierce determination to reclaim her happiness. And I knew in that moment that no matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter how hard Peter and Elaine tried to break her, Hannah would never give up. She would keep fighting, keep pushing forward, until she had built the life she deserved, a life filled with love, respect, and the unbreakable bonds of family. As the weeks turned into months, Diane, Hannah, and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence of Peter's infidelity and expose his true nature to the world. We knew that the only way to truly break free from his manipulation and cruelty was to reveal the truth, to show everyone the man he really was behind closed doors. It wasn't easy. Peter was clever, always careful to cover his tracks and maintain his public image as a devoted husband and father. But we were determined, driven by a fierce desire to protect Hannah and her children from any further harm. We started by hiring a private investigator, someone who could discreetly follow Peter and Kate and capture their indiscretions on camera. It was a risky move, but one we knew was necessary to build a strong case against him. As the evidence began to mount, I could see a change in Hannah. She walked with her head held high, a newfound confidence in her step. She was no longer the broken, defeated woman she had been just months before, but a fierce warrior, ready to fight for her freedom and her family. One evening, as we sat together in Diane's living room, poring over the latest batch of photos and videos, I turned to Hannah with a determined look in my eye. "It's time everyone sees Peter for who he really is. He can't keep hiding behind his lies." Hannah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I'm ready, Mom. Let's do this." The next day, we put our plan into action. We sent the evidence to Peter's employer, his colleagues, and even his friends and family. We posted it on social media, making sure that everyone in his circle saw the truth about the man they thought they knew. The response was immediate and explosive. Peter's reputation crumbled overnight as the community reeled from the shock of his betrayal. His employer fired him on the spot, disgusted by his behavior and the damage it had caused to their company's image. Elaine, too, felt the backlash of her son's actions. Her social circle began to shun her, appalled by her unwavering support of Peter's reprehensible behavior. She was left isolated and alone, forced to confront the consequences of her own manipulation and cruelty. But perhaps the most surprising development was Kate's reaction. When the evidence of her affair with Peter went public, she panicked, fearing the damage it would cause to her own reputation. In a moment of self-preservation, she abandoned Peter, leaving him to face the fallout alone. I watched as Peter's world crumbled around him as he lost his job, his lover, and his standing in the community. A part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, seeing him finally face the consequences of his actions. But mostly, I just felt relief. Relief that Hannah was finally free from his grip, that she could start to rebuild her life without fear or manipulation. As the dust began to settle, I sat with Hannah in her living room, holding her hand tightly in mine. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. You did it. You broke free." Hannah smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom, without you and Diane. You gave me the strength to keep fighting, even when I thought I had nothing left." I pulled her into a tight embrace, my own tears falling freely. "That's what family is for, Hannah. We lift each other up. We fight for each other, no matter what." As we sat there, holding each other close, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, wounds to heal, and trust to rebuild. But I also knew that Hannah was strong enough to face whatever lay ahead, that she had the love and support of her family to guide her through. And as I looked into my daughter's eyes, I saw a flicker of hope, a glimmer of the bright future that awaited her. A future free from pain and betrayal, filled with love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Just when I thought the worst was behind us, Elaine showed up at my doorstep, her face a mask of fury and desperation. I hadn't seen her since the truth about Peter's affair had come to light, and I knew that her sudden appearance could only mean trouble. "We need to talk, Nora," she said, pushing past me and into the living room. "This family is falling apart, and we need to put this behind us." I followed her inside, my guard up and my resolve firm. "And how do you propose we do that, Elaine? Your son has caused immeasurable pain to my daughter and her children. There's no easy fix for that." Elaine whirled around, her eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare put all the blame on Peter. Hannah played a role in this mess, too. If she had been a better wife, none of this would have happened." I felt my blood boil at her words, the same twisted logic she had been using for months to justify Peter's actions. "How dare you, Elaine? Hannah has done nothing but love and support your son, even when he didn't deserve it. She is not to blame for his choices." Elaine scoffed, her voice dripping with disdain. "Oh, please. Hannah has always been weak, always playing the victim. It's time she took responsibility for her own failings." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, Hannah emerged from the kitchen, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination I had never seen before. "Enough, Elaine," she said, her voice steady and strong. "I am done letting you manipulate and control me. I am done letting you make excuses for Peter's behavior. This ends now." Elaine's eyes widened in surprise, clearly not expecting Hannah's newfound strength. "Hannah, be reasonable. We need to think about the family, about the children." Hannah shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "That's exactly what I'm doing, Elaine. I'm thinking about my children's well-being, about the kind of example I want to set for them. And that example is one of strength, of self-respect, of refusing to accept abuse and betrayal." I watched in awe as Hannah stood tall, her shoulders squared, and her head held high. She was no longer the broken, defeated woman she had been just months before, but a fierce warrior, ready to fight for her happiness and her family. Elaine's face twisted in anger, her manipulative facade crumbling before our eyes. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By tearing this family apart." I stepped forward, placing a protective arm around Hannah's shoulders. "No, Elaine, you tore this family apart the moment you chose to enable and defend Peter's actions. You have no one to blame but yourself." Elaine's eyes darted between us, desperation and fury warring in her gaze. But as she looked at Hannah, at the unwavering strength and determination in her eyes, she seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "Fine," she spat, turning on her heel and storming towards the door. "Have it your way. But don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made." As the door slammed behind her, I turned to Hannah, my heart swelling with pride and love. "I am so proud of you, sweetheart. You stood up for yourself, for your children. You showed her that she no longer has any power over you." Hannah smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom, without your love and support. You gave me the strength to keep fighting, even when I thought I had nothing left." I pulled her into a tight embrace, my own tears falling freely. "That's what mothers do, Hannah. We fight for our children, no matter what." As we held each other close, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges and obstacles to overcome, wounds to heal, and trust to rebuild. But I also knew that Hannah was strong enough to face whatever lay ahead, that she had the love and support of her family to guide her through. And as I looked into my daughter's eyes, I saw a flicker of hope, a glimmer of the bright future that awaited her, a future free from pain and betrayal, filled with love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Months had passed since Hannah's confrontation with Elaine, and life had slowly begun to settle into a new normal. With the help of Diane and me, Hannah had found a cozy new home for herself, Emily, and Jason, far away from the painful memories of her old life with Peter. As I pulled up to Hannah's new house, I couldn't help but smile at the sight of Emily and Jason playing in the front yard, their laughter ringing out like music in the warm summer air. Hannah stood on the porch, watching them with a contented smile on her face, and I felt my heart swell with pride and love. "Grandma?" Emily and Jason shouted as I stepped out of the car, running to greet me with open arms. I scooped them up in a big hug, planting kisses on their cheeks. "Oh, how I've missed you two. Look at how big you've gotten." Hannah walked over to join us, her smile widening as she watched our joyful reunion. "They've been asking about you all week, Mom. They couldn't wait for your visit." I wrapped an arm around Hannah's shoulders, giving her a squeeze. "And I couldn't wait to see all of you. This new place looks wonderful, sweetheart. You've done an amazing job making it a home." As we walked inside, I marveled at the warmth and love that seemed to radiate from every corner of the house. Family photos lined the walls, and the air was filled with the delicious aroma of Hannah's cooking. We settled around the dinner table, passing dishes and sharing stories, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of deep contentment wash over me. This was what family was all about: love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds that tied us together. As the evening wore on, Hannah put the children to bed and joined Diane and me in the living room, a peaceful smile on her face. "I never thought I could feel this happy again," she said softly. "After everything that happened with Peter and Elaine, I wasn't sure I'd ever find my way back to a place of joy and stability." Diane reached over and took Hannah's hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "But you did, sweetheart. You found your strength, your resilience. You fought for your happiness, and look at where it's brought you." I nodded, my own eyes filling with tears. "Diane is right, Hannah. You've come so far, and I am so incredibly proud of you. You've shown your children what it means to be brave, to stand up for yourself and your happiness." Hannah smiled, her own tears spilling over. "I couldn't have done it without you both. Your love and support have meant everything to me. I don't know where I'd be without my family." As we sat there, basking in the warmth and love of our little family, I couldn't help but think back on the journey that had brought us to this moment. It had been a road filled with pain and heartache, with betrayal and loss. But through it all, we had held on to each other, drawing strength from the unbreakable bonds of family. Suddenly, the phone rang, breaking the peaceful silence. Hannah frowned as she glanced at the caller ID, her face growing pale. "It's Elaine," she said softly. I felt a flicker of anger and protectiveness surge through me, but Hannah just shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "You know what? I don't need to answer that. I don't owe her anything." With a decisive click, she silenced the phone and turned back to us, her eyes shining with a newfound strength and peace. "This is our fresh start, kids. We're going to be just fine." As I looked around at the faces of my loved ones, I knew that Hannah was right. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. The bonds of family had proven unbreakable, and together we could weather any storm that came our way. And as we sat there laughing and talking late into the night, I felt a sense of deep gratitude wash over me. We had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. And I knew, without a doubt, that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together as a family.